Welcome to In the Room with Communitas North America. It's a time when we invite you to enter our world for a brief conversation and hear more about what we are passionate about as a missional and microchurch network. We also hope that these conversations will inspire you to think about new ways of being the church in North America. I am Leon Longard, the team lead for Communitas North America. My co-host in these conversations is James Cola. So grab yourself a favorite beverage, have a seat, and join us around the table. Hey, everybody. We are back for another edition of In the Room with Communitas North America. And James is here with me. And also our guest today is Dianna McCartan, who was here about a year ago. Actually, I remember it because I was in the process of moving, and I think I was in my car as we were unpacking the truck, trying to do the interview. So anyway, so Dianna is here again. She is with Communitas Twin Cities, and wanted to just ask Dianna maybe to give us a little update, kind of what's been going on with Communitas Twin Cities in the last year.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me back. This has been an interesting year for us this past year in that we seem to be really growing. I don't know if it's word of mouth that's happening or what it is, but we've grown by probably 50%. So we have a lot of new members coming in, which is great. So that's one thing that's been happening for us over the last year. And then intentionally, we've been really focused on discipleship, on really helping our community, thinking about themselves growing as disciples of Jesus. And the way we're doing that is focusing on the parable of the soils and focusing on how to be the good soil. And so I bring in various examples of people who have been the good soil and how they kept our hearts open to God and through tough times. For example, Corey Ten Boom was an example I used, and how they remained steadfast in their faith despite everything looking bleak, etc., or how forgiveness was extended in some pretty tough circumstances to forgive, things like that. And so we've been looking at that and how we can be that good soil. And most recently, we did we had kind of a craft. We had this bowling craft day, and a lot of our community is not able to bowl. You know, they're pretty limited in doing physical things. But so about a third of the community bowled, and then went bowling for a fun day. And then for those that couldn't, we had a little craft get together. One of the craft things that we did was we made some coasters and things like that. But then another thing we did is we planted little seeds in pots, and the whole idea being, how you tend to the seed, give a good light, and give it good water and good soil, etc., to get that seed to grow. All tied into being the good soil, of course. So those two main things. Two main things happened for the last year.
Cool.
That's awesome, Dianna.
Yeah.
Somebody reframed that parable for me very recently, and just encouraging me to consider oh, am I in a place where I'm receptive to what God's saying to me right now, or am I a place? It was very helpful. I think I've easily read that parable and made it about other people, and it was important to make it about me.
Yeah. I've been following the Lord since 2000, and when you look at it, for any of us, there's an intentionality behind being that good soil. And any of us, even us who think we're saved, we got it, we're walking with Jesus, we're doing his work, there's an intentionality behind that where we always have to be kind of cultivating ourselves and making sure we're receptive, and they are to kind of just receive all that God has, and keep ourselves open to that. Yeah, so I get it.
Cool.
Thanks for the update. Dianna, when we were talking about conversations we wanted to have this season, we recognized that the idea of community, communion, and mission kept coming up in our conversations. And in Communitas International, Communitas North America, we really just recognized those functions as being essential to the church, essential to the pursuit of God. And when we started talking about like who can come and talk to us about community, we were so excited for you to come and talk to us about community. So I guess I would ask you, what have these three categories meant for you as a follower of Jesus? And how have they shaped the community that you're part of leading?
Yeah. When I decided to follow Jesus, I was going through a divorce from a very abusive situation, and the community was a really incredibly powerful thing for me at the time, as far as, and that's one of the things that really stood out to me, actually. And before I even um before I even hopped onto the Jesus train, it was the community of Christians around me and how they were different than the community of non-Christians around me that really stood out to me. Um, and I was really just compelled by that, and how they responded to the divorce, and as I was going through it, how they supported me, how they supported my children. There's just a lot of self-sacrificial stuff going on, in different ways of reaching out, than the non-Christian community was doing, that really touched me, and made me even all that more interested in this lifestyle of following Jesus. One, two, um, as I started following Jesus, that communion with Jesus was extremely powerful. I sensed God's presence right away, and was found multiple opportunities of healing with that, and found multiple opportunities where God's word was true to me before I even knew what God's word was. So as I was getting familiar with the Bible and reading some things, I already knew it to be true because I had experienced it in time with God. So, so the communion of His presence was really, really life-giving, and just formed me as a disciple in incredible ways. Mission, like, it's a no-brainer to me as a function of the church. I I I felt early on, as so I became a believer at age 35, and it wasn't but a couple of years after that that I really felt this call to go to seminary. I know that's not normal for everyone, but it was for me. And as I was going, and as I was forming, all the my theological ideas of who and what churches to be, and that ecclesiology, and all that kind of the stuff, uh, that outward approach of the church, the go forth, the go out, the outside church walls, all that was always in there. I didn't see how church could be church without that. Um, and I don't even know how that actually came about, other than, to me, that's just how I just always understood it. in my reading of scripture and seeing what the early church was doing. And I was raised Catholic, and so I was raised with a much more different experience of church. And yes, there's some missional sense in there, with the Catholic missionaries and stuff, but it's very limited outwardness. I'm talking about the church as a whole should be outward and missional, not just a couple little missionaries being sent out somewhere. So that just automatically was just part of my DNA as far as what church should be. Now, of course, I came to faith, in a church that was more a smaller mega church, but that was not a church like what I lead today, of course, or not a church like what Communitas International network looks like. But I will say that church I came to faith in um, did always encourage its people to be sent to go out and in their own context um, be the kingdom, and that we were all priests, and we were all sent, and we all should be um, being the church with those people around us. And so that probably helps some of that to that extent too. But I just always, to be honest, shuddered at driving down streets and seeing all these buildings and all the money spent to maintain them, and there'd be one denomination on one side of the street and another denomination across the street, and you on Sunday mornings you'd have people piling in one and people piling in the other. And what about the folks that maybe weren't ready to cross those church doors, and where are they? Where's the church for them? And anyway, I could go on and on that soapbox, but for me, again, that sentness and that church kind of going out to the people is just always in my wiring for that. So that was who I was. And then when I went to start a church, obviously I I brought those pieces with me in it. And as many know, well, of course, not everyone that's listening to this, but Communitas Twin Cities was born with that in mind. And so we started um, on a street corner, um, going out to and our call was, we felt, was to the unsheltered in St. Paul. And so we started by meeting on a street corner on the third Saturday of the month. And so the idea was to go out and to those folks that they don't have transportation to get to that church, and they're not. It's not only a Sunday morning that they need Jesus, and um, they have a lot of physical needs in addition to spiritual needs. And so let's see what all we can meet, food and other research wise, in addition to bringing them the good news and all those things. And so we, we spent the first 6 months just doing that, before we even as volunteers or anything, even just met in any kind of a inward house church way. It was all out, 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 so that DNA was built on that to start with. So that was how the missional part was started with us, with the Communitas Twin Cities. The community in Communitas Twin Cities, to express that, so the unsheltered population in Communitas Twin Cities, if you think about it, this is a group of people. They in many ways know each other. They see each other at the shelters, at the food banks, at the day centers. They've stood in line with one another at those different places, right? Salvation Army, whatever. So they know each other, and they, in some ways, even, the street talk is like, hey, did you hear so and so died the other day? Or so there's a little bit of that kind of community, but there isn't more the healthier kind of community, I would say, because there just isn't hasn't been a place for it for them where it comes out of, where it's not desperation, where it's just from a place, where you can gather in a place that's of rest and not of need, where everyone's together and someone's um, kind of meeting their needs, and so they're in a place of rest, let's say, and um, and they can relax some, and they don't have to be I'm trying to find the words for it. They don't have to be the one in charge. Now they can, I don't, that's the wrong word, but I think you'll get what I'm saying. Now so and so dies, they can come to Pastor died. Hey, Pastor died. Did you know so and so died? And kind of relieve them of that burden a little bit, or they have somewhere to go with it. If that makes sense. Um, in some ways, there's that kind of community. There's also the community where sometimes people can get in, they get sick of standing in the lines, right? And so someone butts in front of someone else, or someone actually hits someone else's chair, whatever, those kinds of things that can get really irritating. And a little kerfuffle can break out from that. And now someone else can come in and talk about that and realize, like, hey, we're all in this together, and there's enough food for everybody. So one, we don't have to worry, nothing's going to run out. And two, no, you don't butt in line. There's mutual respect for everyone here. So you aren't going to be able to butt in line so and so. And if you did, then you have to leave the line. And so they're not having to fend for themselves. Someone else is kind of watching. And then everyone, like you just said, they're able to just kind of come down a little bit and relax. And then just be able to just be real. No, it's not just, yeah, not have to be so defensive with one another, and just be able to be able to trust one another more, I guess I would say, with other things. Like this next time we get together, we're just going to be sharing our stories a little bit more, or not a little bit more, but we're going to start to share some of our stories more. Um, and the defenses, can come down in that environment as we share together, community, and we're gathered in Jesus' name. When we have all that together, and we've worked really hard to get to those places, and um, I'm constantly saying things like, "Hey, we're a community here. Hey, we're going for community," and they get that. It's taken some time to build, but everybody wants that, and so
Yeah.
I think that if that answers that part for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I'm thinking back before I jump to the next question, but
Yeah.
early on you talked about how the community you saw among the Christians compared to the non-Christians in your world affected your desire to know Jesus. And I just think of it recently, it's kind of this thing lately I've noticed where people will almost, like, I guess for lack of a better word, I'll say victim blame people who've become disillusioned by church. And they'll say, well, yeah, you're hurt by the church, so therefore that's your fault. You're mad at the churches. And I'm like going, I think how we treat each other has an influence on how on people coming to Jesus. And I think your story kind of illustrates that in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah, hands down.
Yeah, I'm just like going, don't people get it? It's not like God's like out here. It's like when we get together, demonstrate God to the world. And I mean, God, yeah, God, but I mean, it's like the best demonstration is us people. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I was at, I remember just last December, I was at your gathering, your Christmas party, and just the way people related to each other was just so fun to watch. And just seeing people from really diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. You have people who had at one time been unhoused and now currently housed, but still kind of struggling from week to week. And you have people that are professionals there together,
Mm-hmm.
um, and when you have this diversity of people in your community, I guess kind of the question is like, how do you facilitate that? Because a lot of times people like only want to focus on the people that are like them, and it's like this work you have to do to like facilitate a sense of community among a very diverse group of people. How do you guys do that there?
You know, there's some universal things that are true for all of us, regardless of socioeconomic, educational, housing situations, etc. Um, I think that has a lot to do with it. We all have brokenness. We all need Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
We all have areas in our life that we need to forgive others. Um, we all have areas we need to grow as followers of Jesus. We all have doubts in our faith. It's all that kind of things. I think, I mean, I center us around those kinds of things. And a lot of times, I kind of level that playing field, so to speak, through those talk times by speaking to those things that are relatable from from wherever you come from. And I do that purposefully, obviously, so that everyone can feel welcome there and can relate.
Yeah.
I think that has a big piece to do with it. Um, and then I just think also through the relationships that have been formed through the years, because many of these folks we've known for 5, 6 years now. The heart that the volunteers bring into it, which are the ones that are from the different socioeconomic backgrounds, they come all right away open to um, how do I say that? Open to wanting to establish friendships with people that are far different with them, and not not hindered by those kinds of barriers. The reality is there's some volunteers that come that would are uncomfortable too, and it's not for them. So I think it's a both and, Leon.
Mm.
Um, it, yeah, I think it has to do with that heart of the volunteer, and where the Holy Spirit's working in them at the time, and how He's calling them to this kind of ministry, and then also just where I can how I level the playing field, so to speak,
Mm.
Yeah.
and bring out the commonalities in us all.
Mm. That's
We all recognize, I think, as the volunteers or whatever, um, we could be in the same positions where it be three different three different right turns, left turns in our life, right? That would
Yeah.
have happened. We'd be in the same position.
Hmm.
Could be. So it's not hard to get there.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. It's true. So true.
Mhm.
Actually, just appreciate. It felt like you were expressing two ideas there, Diana, but two ideas that are very linked. Like the first one being this, like we just like try to recognize and appreciate the commonality that's shared, and
Mhm.
then you talking about like the volunteers, like willingness to connect. Um, And I just think it is so important for people to like recognize the commonality that they share with others. There's clearly something in our brains that like makes us intimidated to engage with people who
Yeah.
we believe are a lot different than we are, whether we think they don't like want to be engaged by us or we're not capable. But I think that really reflects a meditation on an idea that we're too different rather than a meditation on an idea that we have so much in common, which I
Mm-hmm.
just think is more true. Like, it is so important that we appreciate the commonality that people share.
Right.
Yes. And you said that so well, James. I wish you need to put that on a plaque somewhere. Add it somewhere,
It is.
right?
Oh man.
Because that's one of the big struggles. I have some folks that friends, that hesitate to join in because sometimes I'm like with folks like this is a big part of my life. So I'm like, I just wish you could come and see it, and because it's such a big
Mm.
part of my life, and but they
Mm-hmm.
struggle because yeah, because they don't know that they would be comfortable there. And I wish you could see, yeah, it's we all have more in common than you think. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
I
okay.
think
We're
there's
all,
a lot there.
everyone's on a journey, so it's okay. It'll be different someday.
Mhm.
Even
So
oh, what were you saying, Diana?
no, that's it.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I was just saying. I
Yeah.
just remember working with that when I was working with that population, the population living on the streets, more. Um, it it felt so easy to find the commonality. It felt so easy to be like, oh, we're talking about family because this is just an important this is an important part. The human experience is family, or we're talking about that friend that's annoying us. It's just there really are so many just universal human experiences that
Mm-hmm.
Right.
there meet
Right.
over in that space.
It's
Yeah.
much easier to get there because yeah, the what we have added onto our stuff is stuff, right? And our stuff just needs to get stripped away to get to the human experience that is already stripped away with these
Mm-hmm.
groups.
Yeah.
Yeah. One piece I didn't quite touch on with the communion with Communitas Twin Cities, I would say that's a little bit of the harder one to get to. So communion with God. We get there, but it's not like we can sit in some deep reverent moments for these folks have a hard time sitting still. Um, uh, but we get them, we get touches of God going, you know what I mean? So I think obviously that's incredibly important for them to experience God's love and presence. So I try to foster that when I can, but it's probably like I said, one of the more it's just a difficult environment to do that in. Again, just because it's a harder group to get, like I said, to sit still. Um, with all the various struggles that go on. But music is one that we do it.
Yeah.
I'll play one song. I'm not going to play. We can't keep four songs going here or anything like that. But like one song here when we share communion, or we'll do some. Um, what's the word I want to use? I can't think of it. We'll do some things where it's very experiential. So maybe something where they write down a sin and then they put on like they erase paper, where they put it in the water and it disappears, to show they're forgiven. So something like that that's really uh, powerful and a experiential thing that kind of gives them that experience. So
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
One of the things I recall from our last time interviewing you, you guys do a lot of discussion in your community, right?
Yep.
And I
Each
think personally, I have had so many moments of like, oh, I understand God better because this person who is unique is talking about God and like they're shedding light on something that's true about God that I'm prone to like overlooking. And I imagine that's a really cool experience of communion within your group where so much discussion is happening.
Thanks, James. I think so. It seems that way. I try to keep we share about 20 minutes. And yes, it seems that so often the feedback is something they'll say they never heard it before. Or shed kind of new light on something, which I'm surprised kind of because sometimes to me it seems like something basic, but I don't know necessarily the backgrounds of where some of these folks have been. And it may be that I was just able to break it down into a way that's, I try to, and I'm not trying, I try to break it down into something that is really palatable. I'm really cognizant of my audience. Does that make sense? And so I'm not up there trying to show how educated I am, right? Or anything like that. I am trying to um, talk with them as I feel the Lord would want to talk with them. If he was sitting down right there with them and talking with them, and wanted to share something with them. And so, we're 2 or 3 word syllables, at most, and we're just going to share some basic. They're not basic because it's God, but you know what I mean. We're just going to talk very simply and give some good examples to take on to of things. And I have a lot, unfortunately, from my own painful life to bring into the scenario, but it's great because it's real. I can identify with a lot of the things these folks have probably gone through, but then that's a great equalizer there too. So but yeah, I think I'm really they find a place where they know this is a place for them, most definitely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
To move us into a little bit more less concrete, more like theoretic space, Dianna, in your own imagination, what do you think like a thriving community looks like in the church?
Yeah. I think it's one where people are growing at some level in the 3 things we've been talking about. Yeah, in community, mission, and communion. And there has to be a balance of all. And of course, with Communitas Twin Cities, it's mission in itself. So there's not a lot out going, um, although we have done a couple of things, like we raised money together for Ukraine, some different things like that. But in itself, it's a missional organization. So, but I think that that is going on and it has new expressions of it, and people are experiencing that they're growing themselves in their own spiritual journey from wherever they're at. They're moving forward. I think, and growing as followers of Jesus, and or if they're not yet follower of Jesus, they're moving forward on that continuum. I think relationships are growing in it, and there's a place where people feel safe and they feel known. That to me is, I would say, a thriving church.
I like that last piece a lot. Having a space where you feel like, oh, I get to be me here. These people know me.
Right. Right. No fakeness.
That sounds like what you were getting at when you were talking about community earlier, and the difference of experience of community that you think a lot of these people have had and then are having in the context of Communitas Twin Cities.
Yes. So sure. I mean, these guys can really let down as needed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So is community such an essential part of our expression of church?
Well, I would say because God himself is community. In the Trinity himself, there's community going on. Um, and so, we we aren't meant to do anything solo, and we're not solo, we're not an all-inclusive deal, as far as on our own, we do not have all the things needed uh to do this walk well. There's elements each of us have, but we don't have all the pieces. And so there's various things that can get us off track, that we need that community in our life to help us stay on that track and help move us along. The obvious ones are when we get weary, or lose hope, when hard things are going on and we feel really down, and someone to lift us up and keep moving us forward. But there's other things too, that can happen, temptations and things like that, where we need others to help keep us on track. So community is just, and another thing is to be known. I mean, one of the hardest things in the world, I think, you know, and that's one of the main things. I guess I haven't even touched on that much, but um, especially with Communitas Twin Cities, is that yes, I wanted our people to feel known and loved, but seen. These folks experience a lot of the "I'm not looking at you while you're on the street corner," and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
turn away from you, and no, you're a person, and
Yeah.
you matter, kind of a thing. But there's regardless if you have a home or not to stay in, there's many people that feel unseen, right? And don't feel loved. And so we need that from each other in
Mm.
community to know
Right.
that we matter.
That's good. I mean, I think of it. I'm trying to remember. There was a documentary, or there's like a website that was kind of called "Invisible People" or "Invisible No More." There was kind of that idea that we treat people that are living on the streets as if they don't exist, and to find a place where you're known is critical.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
And not only known because you're a government agency that's slapping stuff at you, but, really,
Yes.
really known. Yeah.
Uh,
Just
yeah.
to be valued for who you are, and
Yeah.
not. Yeah, that is. I mean, that's. I think so many people. I mean, we all want that. We all want that, and everybody wants that human dignity. And so
Hmm.
it's good to see it. For people to know there's an environment where they can experience it.
Yeah.
Um, it is fun that you've spoken so well about mission in this conversation. But I'm just appreciating the heart in that like there's like we live in a world full of people who often feel overlooked and cast aside and invisible. I just think it's important that we recognize that like lots of the people around us are having that experience, and
Mm-hmm.
they need people to be friendly and to say
Yeah.
hi and to want to
Yep.
hear. So just
I think there's,
appreciating that.
yeah, thanks, James. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think there's lots of opportunities to create, build, plant missional churches around that mindset of um, being intentional of uh, touching and gathering and blessing people that would otherwise not feel noticed. And they don't have to be obvious ones like the unsheltered. There's a lot of folks out there like that. And then those are the ones too that are in pain, they don't leave their apartments and houses and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
there's got to be ways to get at them, but
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a great mission for someone to get on the radar to get at.
If anybody out there wants to
That's
have
right.
a mission, we will help you with it.
That's
Just
right.
a little pitch in the middle.
There you go. Yes. Check out
Right.
the Communitas North America site. Fill out the form. There you go.
Uh,
We will help you on this mission.
this question that I have feels, I think, a little bit like an extension of Leon's question, but I feel like there are a lot of people who are so prone to wanting to pursue God, but they feel like they're best equipped to do that alone, and they don't necessarily want to do that in the context of community. So I want to ask, like, how is community essential to our experience of God?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And it's a good question for me. Because I'd have been just fine. Well, I wouldn't have been because God wouldn't let me. But I mean, I personally would have been just fine, have my own fun time with Jesus. You know what I mean? Like I was doing just fine. Hanging with him and growing and experiencing all I was. But s- being that I stepped out and did this the way that I did, uh, I realized that I would have been missing out, one, on seeing God in so many different ways that I would otherwise have not seen. Um, I'm trying to think of a metaphor, and I don't know if I'm going to come up with one. We'll see. I'll keep talking. We'll see. But it's like I would have got, and I'm not dismissing God here when I do this here or downplaying him, but it's like I would have got a one track, one flavor of God. And yet when I've branched out and done this in community, I'm getting so many different flavors and expressions of him. Um,
Mm.
it's so much more richer. And um, and I am so much more Christ like. You know, my journey of a disciple has grown so much more because of that. So when I look back, that solo mindset seems really immature of a mindset, which I wouldn't have seen back then, but now it seems really immature or like I would have really missed out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm a finite being, and yeah, there's just so much out more out there um, to how God is moving and expressing himself
Yeah.
through others and through the community of people around us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I just think of like my own experiences when we were in Indianapolis, working with people similar life setting as the people you
Mhm.
have in the past Twin Cities, and just the richness of my encounter with God just was grew because of knowing Him through other people and seeing how He was working in other people and seeing how He was working in people that I was like first going like, God's really involved here. I don't know. Type of thing. You know, I could have looked at it some people judgmentally and been like, oh man, you know, kind of like the Pharisees would look at the people that hung out with Jesus back in the day, you know, and I think, but yet there was this richness that came from seeing how Jesus worked through every one of them. It makes my life better. So yeah, I definitely can resonate with that.
Yeah.
So, well, hey, thank you, Dianna, for joining us. This was a great conversation. Did you have any other questions, James? Or good?
No, I really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, it was great. But we are going to be back in 2 weeks. We're going to continue the series on communion, community, mission. We've talked about community today. Next, in 2 weeks, we're going to focus on communion, talking with Kelsey Patterson, who does some really creative stuff in art and spirituality, and also working with women in her community in Memphis. And we're just going to have her talk about some of the creative ways that she helps people develop communion with and connection with God through art and spirituality. And she's actually planning on testing one of her or doing one of her activities here on the webcast. So James and I will get to participate, and everybody else will get to participate virtually. So, but thanks everybody. We'll see you again in a couple weeks.
Dianna, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.